What has been the most defining moment in your life throughout this journey?
Most defining, I would say the success of Lunchbox.
Best Debut Director.
Best Actor.
I think more recently the Oscar.
And the Oscar goes to The Elephant Whisperers, Kiki Gonzalez and Gunit Monga.
When you say curate, what happens?
So a lot of people submit their scripts and then they get shortlisted in curating. So it's like speed dating.
If it's not a great movie, do you think a good PR can save the movie?
I think a big marketing campaign, big PR activity gets you... You have very little time to be buzzy now because we are dealing with so many distractions.
Yes.
Dealing with so much information. And then you have 3 weeks to get the whole country aware of a new movie coming. So we're definitely in more difficult times than before.
It's predominantly a male-dominated industry, right?
Yeah.
And a 20-year-old girl going and giving instructions to people saying, hey, do this, do that.
Many times I was made to feel like I'm not acknowledged.
You can just message Karan and he's always there for everybody. I mean, is he misunderstood by a lot of people? During Sushant Singh's case,
Sushant Singh Rajput.
Riya Chakraborty was accused of so many things.
After spending 28 days in jail in Mumbai, Riya Chakraborty has finally got conditional bail.
And I can't even imagine what she went through. And finally, after so many years, the judge says, no, she's clean. I mean, she's got nothing to do with this. What that girl would have gone through for so many years.
So hard.
Tell me about this, Gunit. How did this entire journey happen? Because the last time that we met when you were in Chennai, you said some amazing things about your life, which I was discussing with my husband, and I was telling him, this woman has gone through so much, yet nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
She's so strong, so independent, and she's doing wonders, but people don't know about the journey she's had before. Talk to us about your family when you were growing up.
Okay. So I was actually born in a very interesting, chaotic household in Delhi. And I think it was, of course, early 80s. And it was a big, big house in GK2 in central Delhi. And it was a joint family. So that my father had his brother and grandparents all living there. And as I grew up, I realized that it's a very, very toxic household because everybody was just fighting over property. So it was a huge fight over just, land and property. So I have grown up to like Punjabi abuses and very toxic household, having like headaches and migraine out of fear. So loud voices are still very scary for me. It's a trauma. It's a childhood trauma. Through therapy one has figured, so if like heart is racing and panic is happening, it's because someone's screaming. I can't handle it. I mean, like, whatever is the problem, let's just do it. Let's just talk. So aggression and just that sense of aggression and loud screaming voices is not me at all. So that used to be a lot. I used to like hide under my bed because everybody was screaming, so over property, banging doors and just being very aggressive. So that was first 12 years of my life. My parents were absolutely very, very lovely. My parents protected me. But you also grow up and you also realize that they are fighting a battle, So we decided one day to leave the house, and it was a very dangerous night. And it was literally, I think they were very, very violent. Everybody in the family was very, very violent. And it was trucks of police that had come to extract us. It was really hard. There was abuses had gone out of the roof, and, violence had started happening against my mother, and I was 12 years old. And we just left. And I remember getting extracted out of the house, screaming and crying. And we started our life from scratch in outskirts of Delhi. So 3 of us, I'm the only child. And so we went to Surajkund in Faridabad and then got a small apartment, 2-bedroom, identical, 9 buildings, one of them. One floor had 4 apartments and we had one house for 5,000 rupees in rent and started life from absolute scratch. I made colony friends and for me it was a different life altogether. But I think my parents inculcated or just, felt shame and lived with shame. And this is all me articulating retrospectively, It's so hard when you're living in it.
Yes.
So I feel like they internalized shame in a very, very deep way, like disconnecting, not being so, and also kind of, articulating for themselves because they both came from wealthy families and they both just, were put out they were both felt abandoned. My mom lost both her parents, right after the wedding, and my family was abandoned. So it was just really tough for, I think, both of them because now I feel like I wish that we'd just gone to the mountains, I wish but they didn't want to change my school, they were actually like, let's stay in South Delhi, So, identity came from that place, the essence of not being in GK2, not being in South Delhi. So there's a lot of identity attached to that. So there was a lot of shame that we are not there. So slowly cut off from everybody else. But I had the time of my life because I had colony friends. I was in such a big house that I didn't know who my neighbors were, for 12 years of growing up. We were on the main road. We were not allowed. They were all big bungalows with big backyards and big driveways and you literally don't know who your neighbor is or what is even happening in the next house. So, and we were on the main road, so I was never allowed to go out and play. Here, I was going cycling and I had friends and I had people from, in my age group from different schools. So for me, it was teenage of, romance and teenage of, knowing so much and, sharing notes and going and having a gang after school, But for my parents, it was very different. For my parents, it was a lot of let's make our ends meet. So my mom started working. She was just one of the most brilliant women I know. She came from, again, a very wealthy family in Bhopal. Very well educated and then started doing tuition, then started selling wholesale things from Sadar Bazaar, buying them in wholesale and selling them in Kalkaji. Small things, deodorants and showpieces and, then she started selling encyclopedias, then she started selling, then she got into pearls, everything that she could do from home and then tuition. She paid for my entire education. And her dream was that my daughter should travel and she should, know how to speak English well and be well educated, so, so she is all the principles that I have. And my dad was again pretty much, a hustler, sometimes a property dealer, sometimes a construction, cement supplier, sometimes a carpet. He got into carpets, but large part of, he was before that, he was in 10,000 lights, organizing. I think a lot of logistics in my life come easy because of him.
Okay.
He was just that hustler who would make big things happen, would know people, would get things done and, so he hated to be called a property dealer and he said, I'm a property consultant. So, but yeah, largely I think his large identity was being a property consultant and working there. But sometimes his deals used to happen, people not pay commission, sometimes they used to not happen. But mom brought stability in family and everything. And by the time I was getting out of my teens, they both got very, very unwell. Mom got cancer or lymphoma of the throat and lymph nodes cancer. And dad had kidney issues, dialysis. It accelerated to 3 times a week.
Then?
So I think when they both got unwell, they must be in their late 40s.
And you were?
And I was just out of teens. I was 18, 19.
Okay.
I remember I was 18 when her cancer was discovered. So we all as a family fought that. And I started working in international films as an intern in Delhi. So
how did that transition happen? You were always interested in the movies.
I actually was always interested in, I think, organizing things because of my dad, like logistics.
Okay.
Take up responsibilities and get things done. And my best friend, Prerna, and who I just mentioned, her mom, Anurita Sehgal, was in international films. And I just started as interning with her. And because Ministry of Information and Broadcast is in Delhi, a lot of international films come to Delhi. There's a lot of liaison work. There's also a lot of shoot work set in North, in Punjab, in Jaipur, Rajasthan, Agra. All of that headquartered in Delhi. So I just started in that. And I just was never scared of taking responsibility and saying yes to any kind of work. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I also secretly wanted to make a house for my parents.
Okay.
So I was like, I need money for that and I need to work. So I could not wait to work. So I, even in my school, was always organizing large stuff, like putting up a show, inter-school, pan-India, like just organizing a lot of things, mobilizing as a prefect. So I was always, I think it starts early on. In school, as I was not scared of chewing more than, or taking on more than I can chew, saying yes to more than I can chew. I was like, I'll work up to it. I'll work hard. I'll make it happen. So I think from childhood, some asking doubts clearly has been embedded in me.
Okay.
And that was, I think, a healthy childhood because my parents were my best friends. Yeah. And I think when I did get into my 20s and I started working in more movies, international films that were coming into India, and my role increased from an intern to a office manager, production coordinator, location manager, and then moving up to a line producer who's like handling the whole show, all the vendors, the entire execution, like a head of an operation, head of a certain budget.
So you were quite young back then.
Yeah, 20s.
Okay.
20s.
I mean, it's predominantly a male-dominated industry, right?
Yeah.
And a 20-year-old girl going and giving instructions to people saying, hey, do this, do that. How did you feel and how were you made to feel?
Many times I was made to feel like I'm not acknowledged. Many times I was made to feel age is definitely an issue, especially in India, I feel. I think in working in international films, age is a boom because they're like, oh my God, you're young. Tell us how you feel. We'd like to know from you. But when it comes to India, I feel like there is a lot of ageism. There is a lot of like, oh, you're young. What do you know?
Okay.
So that I definitely felt a lot. But I just think being very clear at the end of the day, I wanted to get my work done. I would also use people around me to get the work done. Like, so if instructions were easier to be said by one of my seniors, I'd be like, just you say it, no?
Okay.
Like, I need the work done.
Okay.
So focus on the goal.
Okay.
Everything else is noise.
Okay.
So move forward. And that is largely what I think I did subconsciously. And I was very driven to buy a house. And by 22, I did buy a house for my parents and in GK1, just as they wanted it. Ground floor, 3-bedroom opposite GK1, walking from GK1, Pahadi Wala Gurdwara. So whatever they wanted. And that is a huge sense of pride for me in my life. My dad also hustled and made sure that we were able to get to the finish line and buy it, but it was in construction. And the tragedy in all of this is that they both did not, it took a year to get made and they both did not, live to move into it. So they both passed within 6 months.
When you were 22?
When I was 22, between 22 to 23. I think by 23, they both passed. And I just had to be like, what do I do with this house? You put so much of your happiness and life and joy in an outside thing, like in a milestone. You put your joy in a house. जिस दिन घर आ जाएगा, उस दिन life हमारी ठीक हो जाएगी. जिस दिन अपनी छत होगी. It's so embedded in our being that, the day you have your own roof, that you own your own house, and that is the day life starts. You've arrived in life. So I think you stop living only chasing a goal, only chasing a milestone. So they were both very unwell. They were both fighting illnesses and they deteriorated. And we did everything we could. And then it just was like, where do we go from here, you know? So that only child and that feeling of, my mom used to talk to me. And in her last 6 months, because when she knew she's stage 4, and she was like, what is your plan? Talk to me. And I was 23. And I was just like, you're not going anywhere. I was overly optimistic. She's like, let's make a plan, So she used to talk to me. And she's like, you should go to your Masi. I will speak to her, build a life there. And then even my Masi, she lost her son, right? 3 months after she lost her sister, which was my mom. So she was totally depressed. So it's not like I had that anchor to hold on to. So for me, it was just work. All my friends did post-graduation and they were moving to Bombay. So I just moved to Bombay. And I was like lock, stock, barrel, put everything in storage, sold the house. It was 2008. The market was going down. 2009, the market was going down. And the huge crash had happened. And the house that we had bought in 2008, 2009 was lower in value.
Right.
And I was like, just get out of it, So moved to Bombay and then put all the money in movies and propelled myself to be a producer. And here I am, 2 decades, almost now touching 2 decades.
What has been the most defining moment in your life throughout this journey?
Most defining, I would say the success of Lunchbox. One of my movies.
Okay.
I think more recently the Oscar.
Yeah. Talk to me about Lunchbox. How did you choose the script?
So it's a very interesting story. So I was in Goa and, there's this, there's a film festival that happens in Goa and it's amazing. And there they curate a lot of scripts. They curate a lot of projects for producers to meet. So
when you say curate, what happens?
So a lot of people submit their scripts and then they get shortlisted and curating. So it's like speed dating.
Oh, okay.
So there's a room of 20 writer directors, 20-25 people, and you go from table to table listening to their pitches. And as a producer, you go from table to table and the creatives are fixed on each table and you have a booklet and you're like, okay, I want to meet this person. So I was meeting everybody.
Okay.
Till I reached this one table, which was Ritesh Patra, who was in Doha, who was a teacher in Doha and had come from Doha and was pitching. And I was like, and he was pitching something else. He was pitching a film called The Story of Ram. And I really, really liked it. And it was really nice. And I was like, let's talk. This is really nice. And it was really lovely talking to Ritesh and, it stood out for me. And then both of us won a scholarship and both of us were, in the same festival. Both of us individually were then in Rotterdam, for a scholarship that we won. And it was a producing program in Rotterdam. And that's where we were like, we spent a week, 10 days together. We were like, let's work together. Let's be director, producer together and figure this out. On that journey, we were making applications for co-production. We were figuring that out. There was a lot that Ritesh was exposed to in terms of the world of co-production. And I was stepping in and making all the applications, figuring it out. And he was like, I want to go write another film. And he had a certain idea of it. And it was The Lunchbox. And while we had almost put together the money for Story of Ram, he's like, I just need to go write this. So I feel like Lunchbox came with its own destiny. It came as a huge pressure on Ritesh to write it, when you just have that in you that this needs to, and it flew from the day go, and we kind of put Story of Ram on the back burner. Jumped on Lunchbox. He took a few months and then all our mentors that Sundance was mentoring us and few other festivals, we moved them to Lunchbox. We got a lot of advice and we moved it into all our co-productions. All the doors we had opened for another project went through for Lunchbox and that's how it somehow came together. And then I raised the equity in India and it also became the first Indo-French co-production. Where I figured that the treaty between India and France was signed in 1985 and we were the first ones to use it in 2011.
With films?
Yeah, for films.
Oh, okay. Why do you think, even last time you were talking to me about how the exposure that Indian movie makers have towards what is happening in the West or Oscars is very limited. Why do you think that exists?
So, we largely in India do business, and we sell all our downstream rights, which is TV and satellite and just linear TV rights and digital rights in India for the rest of the world. And that kind of eliminates other distributors around the world to come in and be like, how do we make our money? So you actually keep theatrical open and all the other rights is where you feel like, I'm making the film. And how does the business of films work? We have certain rights that we have to sell. You're making a film at an X value. You have windows to sell, which is digital, TV, satellite, music, and then you have theatrical. And we largely try and cover most of the costs, 70 to 80% of the costs through the downstream rights. And for 100 years, 100 plus years, Indian business has been built where we sell the whole world in India. However, this is not a practice in US.
Okay.
The general vocabulary of business of film is domestic and international. So people there sell domestic rights and then they separately sell international rights. So that is what the world is used to. The whole world is used to that language. But we, if license day one, the whole world in India, then only theatrical is open. And the person who has to do marketing to get audiences into theater does want safety net with the downstream rights.
Okay.
They want that territory's TV rights, that territory's satellite rights, as almost like, okay, whatever money I make, I hope we make through theatrical. But if not, then I have these rights to license, to sell. But in case those rights are not there, then that becomes very difficult. So that's why I feel distribution, we actually do very well with the diaspora. So we have groomed our market. We've groomed all Hindi, Tamil, Telugu language films to do very well in India and to the diaspora around the world. But to really reach out to the non-diaspora, one needs to really look at distribution differently.
Okay.
And that is an interesting thing to work on. And
is it happening in India right now?
It happens at an independent level.
Okay.
Like a Lunchbox did that, or recently we did that with Kill.
Okay.
With our recent film. But that's when, you're doing something so new that the India market is like, we don't know what to do with this. So then you're almost, because of lack of opportunity, you go and build a whole world of an opportunity because there's no precedence here.
Right.
But it is not a norm. It is not a standard. The standard is to sell the whole world in India.
Do you think a good PR can save a bad movie? I'm asking you this because in the last 5 years at least, the promotional activities, everything has taken a completely different turn. I think even the recent Prithviraj's movie, there's been so much PR that has been happening, which probably I did not see when I was growing up. So now I want to understand any movie. If it's not a great movie, we'll come to what is a great movie. If it's not a great movie, do you think a good PR can save the movie?
You mean marketing?
Yes.
I actually am really, really waiting to see Prithviraj's movie, which I'm excited about, but I haven't yet. It just released.
Yeah.
I think a big marketing campaign, a big PR activity gets you, you have very little time to be buzzy now because we are dealing with so many distractions.
Yes.
Dealing with so much information. And then you have 3 weeks to get the whole country aware of a new movie coming and make a appointment or have them scheduled to go see a movie. So we're definitely in more difficult times than before. We are competing with reels. We are competing with just time, and life for people to come to cinemas. So definitely it does get the weekend buzzing. I feel like it does get you an opening, but I don't think it can, a good movie is a good movie, and period. And it always will find its audience. It will shine. But sometimes a song breaks out or a big marketing push happens. It does get people on day 1, day 2 to test out. A larger people come in the cinema to just experience the film. And that actually is something that also happens with big star cast in films. So because those films can also afford big marketing. And what is big marketing? It's like partnering with so many other channels, so many other avenues. And so you are available everywhere talking about, hey, this Friday is coming up. Reminder, this Friday is coming up. It's hard.
Is it a lot of pressure on the producer and also the actors to keep doing this?
Absolutely. It is part of our job. I don't think it's a pressure, but it's part of our job. It's one thing to find the money and to make the film. It's a whole other thing to navigate marketing, distribution, sales, pan-India or around the world. So it's all navigated, and I look at, people launching so many things throughout the year, be it FMCG, be it something. Movies, there's just little time.
Yeah.
It's just 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, it's reducing.
Yeah.
And then you go all out with so much money and be like available so that you get to newspapers, you get to public consciousness that this is coming up. So,
Do you think when a movie is overhyped, right? Audience come with a different expectation. And if the movie is actually good, not as good as they expected it to be, it kind of bombs the movie. Does it happen when the movie is overhyped? I'm asking you this question because recently I heard Ashna Kalpati's interview where she says we make a conscious decision to not overhype the movie because we want the audience to just come with an open mind and enjoy the movie. And every time we've done this, the box office has been great. But the minute we overhype the movie with a lot of things, people kind of, it backfires for them.
I feel like, today there is something that I'm very sad about these days. It's like the trailer telling the whole movie.
Yeah.
Its trailer is like the mini movie. So something that I feel like, kuch to chupa lo, kuch to matlab, not your trailer is having a full structure, These are so individual decisions. There is no standard answer.
Who makes this decision?
The producers.
Okay.
And in many cases, the actor, if the actor is also one of the producers.
Okay.
But it's usually the producers.
Okay.
Because it's the money that one has raised and is on stake. And we are responsible for that equity. And to be able to bring audiences in, to be able to, get the buzz of the film out there that it is coming. Sometimes a lot of good movies actually don't even have the money to spend so much, especially the independent filmmakers. So it's always like how much is enough. And it's a thin line to walk in. And then how many screens do you come out on? It's a math. It's a whole math and a science that you keep doing it and you somewhere figure out, okay, maybe this is enough. And sometimes when the film does well, then you double down. So yeah.
What is a good movie according to you?
That makes you feel something. That touches your heart and makes you feel something. That makes you forget where you are and transports you into the world of the characters. You take those characters home. You think about it. You talk about it. And you live with them. So
it leaves an impact on you.
It leaves an impact on you and you feel like, you've experienced something. It's such a gorgeous, beautiful medium. Sound, picture, so many people coming together, putting up an act. It's like, when you experience a theatrical, a musical, this is like the next level. It's celluloid. It's going to always be there. So I feel very spiritual about it. I feel very spiritual about my business.
Okay.
And I feel it's magical. You vicariously live so many lives through the characters. And what would that character do? What would that character think? We live in I feel like we're all a bit delusional because we live in a future. We live in a couple of years ahead always because what we are making right now will take a year to come and then, the result of it. But right now we are thinking it is a super hit.
Right.
So we have to be a bit delulu to survive this.
What was the recent good movie that you watched? Indian movie?
I loved Superboys of Malegaon.
Okay.
That Reema Katki has directed and Tiger Baby has produced. I love Superboys of Malegaon.
Okay. What about the movie was so touching for you?
It's a love letter to cinema. So Malegaon is a small city, a small village where young boys with very little means, and it's a real life story, come together to make movies on their people, what they understand, and they make what their take on life is. They use equipment that's available to them. So it's a love letter to the business of cinema. It's beautiful. It's beautifully shot. It's makes you feel, it makes you cry with their success, makes you cry with their hurt, it makes you smile with their success, and you so want them to win. They're trying to make a movie. It's so expensive, an art form, It's so big an art form. It's insane amount of people management and decision making. But it's possible. And so yeah, it's a beautiful story. And it's a real life story.
Okay. So when commercial movies come in, right? Movies which don't have a lot of logic. There are songs, it's just these fights and all of that. Commercially, they perform really well, which means as a business, it's a great decision for you to make. But movies like this and even Lunchbox, you cannot make 1,000 crore or 2,000 crore. Do you feel bad about it?
You know, I used to.
Okay.
When I was young and, you know, especially when Lunchbox came out, and I was like, in my own, I felt like it's such a huge achievement. And this was 2013. And I felt like now there will be a red carpet rolled out in India for me and be like, oh, my child, make more independent films, you know. You've managed to find money something in a different way, in an interesting way. So when you raise money in France, it is not, it is soft on recoupment. So it only comes after the equity. So that means that the budget of the film, if he raised 45 to 50% in France, the rest of the 50% is equity. So the first thing to be recovered is only 50%.
Okay.
So we've reduced our recovery by 50%.
Right.
So that's what we first did with Lunchbox. And that's why I'm so proud of building a co-production on that. Then we managed to say no to all the downstream rights in India, which is so hard decisions to take because that's money on the table. You know, and you see immediate profit and you're like, no, let me try the rest of the world. Let me try what happens. We went to Cannes. We recovered our entire 50% equity in like 24 hours because the whole world came in and started giving minimum guarantees and money for an independent film. You know, and then the whole world would release in the next 2 years after that. Nobody had ever walked that line from India. We didn't know what the box office will be in Spain, in France, in Germany. We just had sold those territories. We came back to India with only India territory in our hand. And that's when I reached out to Karan Johar and I said, would you present it in India? It's a love story. He saw the film, he loved it. And he presented it. And it was our first association together in 2013. And Dharma and Karan Johar came on board and ran the marketing and distribution of the film. And I feel elevated the journey of the film theatrically in India.
Okay.
And that was a 25 crore box office in 2013, which is a big deal for any independent film. I just wanted to do more. So I used to feel like, you know, it's such a huge feat because then you still have to sell your downstream rights. And we'd made all our money back. You know, the film was made in under 10 crore. It was almost in 10 crores with equity being around 4.5, 5 crores.
Okay.
And rest was softer money.
Okay.
So I had to recover only 5 crores. That I had done in Cannes by MGs.
Okay.
Then we came into India. It went into bonuses. So Lunchbox is a very high ROI film.
Okay.
You know, a lot of films made in 80 crores, making 100 crores are actually losing money.
Okay.
You know, a lot of big films are also made in 400, 600 crores. And if you think that if they made 1,000 crores on box office, it's a difficult ROI to match. So Lunchbox is a very high ROI film. We were in profit, we are in profit. And then the whole world started releasing and the film started breaking out in every country around the world.
Okay.
Highest box office foreign language film in Spain, in France, in US, in Japan. It just went on to become a moment. In Canada, winning A-list awards for 2 years, getting a BAFTA nomination a year whole after. Because it only released in UK in 2014. So it was in BAFTA in 2015. And we had released it in 2013. So what we live here, what our vocabulary and understanding is only about this weekend. You know, like whatever we recover this weekend or this lifetime, this 2 weeks, this 1 week. And here was a film that was releasing around the world for 2 years at its own time and giving us money and breaking out and giving us reviews and so much love and awards. So it really was a journey that one had never lived. And of course, I didn't have peer group to articulate that, understand that. But there was so much anxiety in 2013 that you've done bad business.
Okay.
Because we did not sign up with TV rights in India.
Okay.
You know, which is the only business that we knew.
Back then.
Even now. So if you sold the whole world in India, we would have gotten TV rights worth, you know, anywhere from 7 to 8 crores. But we chose not to do that. So that number came down to a couple of crores because it was almost like punishment. You're only giving us India. Firstly, people didn't even want it. The channels didn't even want it. And when they took it, that number came down And then you're visibly sitting on a loss for a decision. As a producer, I made a decision to sell whole world piecemeal. At that point of time, I didn't know that we will get surplus from around the world. When that started coming in, validation came in.
Okay.
When that started happening, it was like joy and it was relief, and money was coming in, which was much more than the money we said no to. And visibility of a film and our country and our people and our language happened at a large scale, globally, till date. You know, you go to a small village around the world, in a small town, if people say they've seen any Indian film, Lunchbox would be one of those. And that is a personal, monumental achievement. And the ROI is very high. And people made money. You know, for what they invested, they made a lot of money back.
Yeah.
So I always felt like I should be doing more. And when that did not happen and a lot of judgment happened, I was very confused about life. And that's when I was very sad about, like, the effort is the same, you know, you're shooting and but there's a lot of judgment of, you're a independent filmmaker, you're a small filmmaker. So you're put in that box. And I'm always like, you know, small or big, make a good film, na? That is what matters. What matters is what will stay as legacy and stay as test of time. You know, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the line, people are going to pick up these movies.
Yeah.
We define decades with movies.
Yes.
If we look at 70s, 80s, 90s, we only go back to them as...
It was released this year.
Yeah, that was, you know, the time of Amitabh Bachchan.
Yes.
90s is the time of Shah Rukh Khan. And, you know, your love stories came on. And, you know, you're talking about Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge. Or you know, so you're just always talking about decades in movies. So I feel like what we do is important. You know, we are defining pop culture in some way.
Yeah.
And building a legacy of sorts, you know. 100 years from now, all our time on this earth is limited. But when I go, somebody's going to pick up those movies and join the dot that there was somebody doing this.
But now when you look at the movies, are you somehow disappointed as to how so many good movies are not being made?
The business is going through a tough time right now.
Okay.
There are lesser players, lesser buyers. The digital world has, of course, the TV world has reduced their numbers and the digital world has grown. That is cyclical. I feel, you know, I feel a lot of people are positioning on what they feel will do well. You know, it's been a long time that we've been making projects, you know, which is, this would work, or, you know, if we do it this way, this would work, or, you know, copy what worked in the South. The lines have blurred now with digital. You know, we are consuming all the South film day to day, day on day. So definitely those kind of remakes are now seeming dated, you know, and are not cool in Hindi cinema. But I feel like leaning into your intuition is still not out of fashion. You know, so harnessing that intuition is important. You know, having faith is important. When you tell a story with that faith, it will travel, it will find its audiences, it will find appreciation. We have to stop projecting and we have to just be real on what we really truly love and want to do. You know, so I've always been on that corner. I've always had people around me who are making projects because they feel they can make a bigger buck. And maybe that's a way of doing business, to each their own. But for me, it's always been like one step at a time. I feel I can do a small film, a big film. You know, there's all these judgments all around. There was like, how will you ever make an action film? We went on to make Kill. Made one box office around the world, won awards around the world, to the point sold the remake to the director of John Wick. So, you know, and it's the first for any Indian film and it allowed us to show our craft, our DOP, our, you know, our action, our actors, our characters, our story, our skin color, our language, our culture, our reference around the world.
Right.
And that matters. You know, people see that, appreciate that, and entering that world through a genre film, otherwise a Hindi language genre film. So, you know, there's always this judgment. You've always done dramas. How will you ever do an action film? And then one does an action film, it becomes this. So I feel like काम तो वही है, काम करना आता है, you know. But judgment से तो बाहर आओ. तुम हमेशा छोटा फिल्म बनाते हो. What is छोटा and बड़ा? Box office.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, budget.
Production budget. Yes.
Production budget. But you're hiring the same equipment. you're doing the same job. As long as you can make people feel, you can make people laugh, you can make people cry, you can get them scared, you can get them on the edge, you can give them a thrilling experience, the film will reach home.
Okay.
Will reach its audiences. When they get disinterested when you think that this is what they want, I feel like we're positioning and posturing a lot. कि हम ऐसा करते हैं क्योंकि उसने किया था तो अब हम ये प्रोजेक्ट बना लेते हैं, इसको ले लेते हैं, ऐसे कर लेते हैं. That's out of fashion. People can see through it. Audiences are very intelligent.
Yeah. Because now there's so much more exposure to different genre of movies.
Fully. And even COVID, I think it increased the exposure to Korean films and series and Iranian films and series, and it blurred lines. And when you have Christopher Nolan film coming, 6 a.m. shows are houseful.
True. Yeah.
So that's because audiences are intelligent.
Yeah.
And we, I feel like, need to service them even better.
So now I wanted to ask you this based on my personal experience. So there was this movie called Love Today, which was made in Tamil, and the same movie was remade in Hindi. It was a very good movie here. I mean, I think 100 crores or something it crossed here. But in Hindi, it was not that great. Same movie, same storyline. Why do you think there's a difference when it is being remade?
Actually, I've not seen both the films.
Okay.
So, but Ghajini did well.
Right. But it was the same director.
Ghajini was the same director. Yeah. The same producers also, I think.
Okay. So in general, when a movie is remade.
Actually, now I feel like, I feel like now especially the fashion of remakes is a bit out. I think Mrs. really did well recently. Yeah. Which was
The Great Indian
Kitchen. And which Nimisha was amazing and Sania Malhotra was amazing.
Right.
And in fact, Mrs. when it started, I was also thinking that, why, because it's so recent.
Yeah.
Mrs. was so recent. But Mrs. really came and broke the glass ceiling of its numbers digitally on Z5. But but North India, every household conversation is Mrs. because it's given a voice
to women,
to women, and they've been able to articulate something,
yes,
through the film.
Yes.
So that did well. So it's, I think, a lot to do with, I feel like remakes are not working now because people have exposure and when people can see through that. But this is it.
Also, when it comes to nepotism, right? People always speak about it from the actor's perspective. But from the producer's perspective, how does it work? I mean, this is totally out of curiosity, I want to understand. Because when you have a star kid, already there's marketing that is going around, there's PR that is going around. So a lot of eyeballs are there on the movie. And when you take versus somebody who's a newcomer, as a producer, what pressure does it put on you?
And you're speaking to somebody who's only worked with newcomers.
Yes.
All my life.
Yes.
I just did Kill with Lakshya and Raghav, both outsiders.
Yes.
So I'm also somebody who's never worked with classic star kids or, absolute auditioned people and just love their work and put them into movies, gone and found money, made those movies. I'm sure with, there comes a lot of I feel like it's a huge pressure on the actors, the stars,
yes,
and on the producers and on everybody because it is a very large business and marketing does play a very large role in it. And even the audiences, even the PAP videos, they're all very, very interested. They're interested for decades in what the star kids are doing.
Yes.
For decades they are in front of the camera. They're going to school. They're going for a match. They made an expression. It becomes national news. So that obsession is definitely there. So they coming on screen, of course, people, there is a set audiences that already know about them and they're young. I feel like it's also very, very high pressure for them. And I feel like they're very, very vulnerable because now the judgment is just insane. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And all family businesses are inherited by the next in kin. All pan-India, around the world. Such large corporates, they're bachpan se trained to come into those shoes. But it's just because we are in everybody's face. We are an industry that is in everybody's face. We are a bedroom conversation of everybody. We're actually a very small industry, but everybody knows everybody. It's tiny, and when you work in it and you get into it, but we are definitely a very, very curious eyeball rising industry. And I don't know why it is not cool for if they have grown up loving what their parents have done, for them to also do it. It's standard for any other business too. You know, I feel that way. But there's also beautiful films, like I just said, like, you know, when you do a Super Boys of Maligaon, there are no star kids in it, and it's made by one of the A-list production companies, and then people don't show up. So then you're relaying on that stats, and you're like, oh, so people didn't come for this. Some people came for this. Let's continue doing this, you know. So the business informs decisions. We are different at Sikha Entertainment. We did Kill with ranked newcomers, and we did business. Lapata Ladies was with newcomers, and it did really well. I think at the end of the day, I can't emphasize more on chota karo, bada karo, but acha karo. And that comes with a lot of, you know, therav, and that comes with, you know, and we're in the business of creativity, and there is no right or wrong. But that just comes with being a sponge, or being open to feedback, being real, you know, and not assuming that this is what the audiences want.
When you say being real, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've had multiple conversations with you, and every time I have a conversation with you, I understand you just as you are.
Yeah.
On set, in front of the camera, behind the camera, and literally everywhere. But when you said you also have to navigate egos when it comes to stars, does it make you feel uncomfortable to see people act as two different people on screen and off screen? How do you process that?
You know, I'll tell you a story. I was once in a room with a very, very big actor. And, you know, people actually don't understand, firstly, what a producer does. Like, what do I do? Even in my own industry. Like, you're a producer? Because I don't come from money. I don't come from a film family. I don't come from any wealth. You know, completely self-made, completely like one film after another, and, you know, gained a bit more momentum, a bit more faith, and people worked with me, and those films worked over 2 decades. So I was with, I had a script which is beautiful, and we pitched it to a very big A-list actor. And he's, she, I don't want to name, is also a producer, because all the major A-list actors are producers. So I went up, they really liked the script, and then they were like, okay, so we'll buy this. I was like, no, it's something that I will make, and, you know, and I'm offering it to you. So that was a very uncomfortable spot, because they were genuinely confused. What will you do? Oh, we are producers. You know, we'll put the money, you know. I was like, but it's my film. And that was a very, very tough conversation, which is, they were so confused. They were like, well, what will you do? It's okay. Just tell us your fees. I said, no, it's my, so then I had to just respectfully say that, you know, this is something that I've developed, and this is what I do. I'm a producer, and I find stories, I develop it, and then I reach out to an actor, and then we raise the money. And they're like, what money we'll bring in? So we are the producers. I said, so we can look at doing this together. But I said, respectfully, like, you are an invaluable asset, so am I. You know? So
how did they take it?
So then they had to think. They were like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's think about it. So it was just very interesting to be in that room with their representative. Of course, not the
Actor,
with their representative, voicing thoughts that, you know, what will you do? They were very confused.
Did you make the movie finally?
Yes, we did. So it's, you know, so people, just for people to see was an equal. You know, one had to articulate. I'd never people don't really say this on your face. So I was like, let me explain what I do, you know.
Sometimes do you think because, not even because of the actor, but because of the people that they're surrounded with,
Yeah.
they kind of lose touch with the reality and they feel like they're the gods.
No, they also get insane amount of attention.
Mm.
So I feel like they're also vulnerable. And I feel like if any human being gets that kind of attention, you know, then you actually hold on to few people that you trust very closely.
Mm.
You know, and then over years, you grow up with those people, you know. So, it's a lot of attention that you're constantly living with.
Mm.
You know, you have to always have to be able to live with a 2-arm distance is also tough. Like, you know, you have to always, you know, put up an act and...
Is it difficult to trust people in the industry?
No,
Mm.
I don't think so. It's like, I feel, I have to like everyone. You know, sorry, very,
No, you
very
are
bad
an
answer.
exception. You are an
Very
exception.
bad answer. Any business, anything I do, I go in with 100% trust.
Mm.
That's my first reaction. I very recently met somebody who did say that that her life experience is of not trusting. Her first reaction is that.
Yeah.
And my first reaction is 100% trust.
Trust.
Right. Recently, I was having a conversation with somebody and I was like, oh, so interesting, you know, because we are all defined by our life experiences and our choices. So I go full heart, full in, let's hug, let's do this. And then when that erodes a little, you know, that then you're like, oh, maybe we should be even clearer with our communication. You learn in the process.
Mm.
You know, we should be clear with our boundaries. This is work. You know, everything is not family. Everything is not. So there are people on extremes also that you meet, you know, and then you talk through how workflow will happen. And then you get wiser with life and time, you know, with some dhoka, with some things that you've lost, you know, in the business.
The first time we interacted, I still remember on Zoom call, you were all decked up. You looked so pretty. And you said, I just came back from a puja or a party.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. What happens? What kind of conversations happen in these parties?
I barely go to parties, but I'm very bad with, small talk.
Yeah.
I can sit and talk about spirituality for hours.
Yes.
My spiritual journey, this, that. I think now people talk to me only about that, you know.
They know.
Even within the industry.
They know now.
Messages come to me for that. Otherwise, it's very like, I don't even know. I usually make fool out of myself because I usually don't know how to say the right thing put at a spot. The Diwali parties are lovely. We all play cards. It's normal. You know, it's, largely for me, parties is Diwali parties. When you go out and you meet everybody at large in various houses. And I think I'm consistently, invited at a couple of Diwali parties, not everywhere. So yeah. And the pujas are like either a havan or, you know, a satsang. And I think at the core of it, everybody I feel is a simple person. And their life at one point of time, they're also, you know, really grateful. A lot of people articulate their own way of success and how they got there, what they got there. But they're human beings. And I actually find my industry to be amazing. You know, I love, like I got married with no real blood family, you know, so one Mamaji, my real blood family was there. Rest were all cousins, second cousins. Some of them were there. But I've grown up in this industry and made my friends. And I got married with 100 people ready to welcome my husband, Sunny, and his family. And they were all from the industry. They're all friends I made from the industry. So I feel it's beautiful and it's given me so much. And to all the women also, you know, I feel it's very safe. It's great to work at. It's super evolved people, travel the world, you know, wanting to make good cinema. But that's the industry I inhabited. And that's the industry I live in and I work in. I understand we are also in an echo chamber and there are many more production houses and there is a different work culture everywhere else. But, you know, I somehow have attracted the good lot. Yeah.
I remember seeing an interview where I think Karan Johar spoke about when he was being asked about international filmmaking or something. He said, the only person you need to go ask this question to is Guneet. And he has high regards for you. And even the last time when we were talking, you were telling me how you can just message Karan and he's always there for everybody. I mean, is he misunderstood by a lot of people?
I think he's doing so well, touch wood. And he's such an amazing friend, mentor, and a person. He does have a talk show, which has been there for many, many years. And I think largely that goes into households. And that talk show is also done very well. So largely people do think that he's that talk show host, but he's one of the brightest producers, directors in our country. And now a model. Like now a supermodel with his recent pictures. But he's one of the kindest person, and he's such a bright and shining light in my life. Like I'm almost like how to be more like him, how to be so available and so on top. Like if I do 5 projects, I think he's doing 30. And he's available for everybody, on point to answer those questions, runs a very successful company, is an incredible business person, is an incredible director, is a mentor to half the industry. And he's really pushed. The other day I was telling him, we work with all these first-time directors, we make independent films. And he's like, so do I. I work with first-time directors all the time. So he's mentoring so many, and in fact, his packaging, his sense of music really captures the nation's imagination. So it's so rare. And then on top of that, he's an anchor. He does award shows. He's a TV host. He's, I think he has more than 24 hours, and I'm jealous about that. Like where does he get all the time? He's a brand ambassador. You walk into an airport, there are hoardings with Lenskart and Karan Johar.
Yes.
I'm just like, it's incredible. And he's not an actor, he's a filmmaker. And he's like a loved Rocky and Rani. He makes big films, says so much through his film. So I think he's one of the most, he's the brightest mind that we have in our country. And to make Kill with him was incredible because he understood what he wanted to do. So here was me pitching him an extreme action film about gore and, as far apart from Dharma's love stories. And he was like, go ahead. You've committed to let's commit to the genre and make a truest version of the genre. And when we were doing gore and I called him, I said, thoda khoon kharaba zyada hai isme. He's like, just go full on.
This was in Kill.
Yeah, this was in Kill. He's like, we committed to the genre, go full on. So you need that mentor and that voice of reason. And he's, been that. We've now done 3-4 things together and 3-4 films, and we are doing more. And I'm in awe of Karan. I'm in awe of how he's so available. He genuinely replies to his WhatsApp way sooner than I do to many people. And I'm just like, and in between shoot, he'll be like, I'm in middle of shoot, but this is work gets done. Work never stops. Obsessed with work. And this, very punctual.
Okay.
Also somebody who's always on time, is 5 minutes before time. Anytime you give him or you say that we'll do a screening there's a press conference, there's this. It was the same during Lunchbox in 2013. It's the same during Kill, the same experience. And he elevates and celebrates everybody around, treats people like an equal. He's a great person to be in business with.
So you work with both North and South. I mean, though we don't have to define it that way now, it's all pan-India. Do you see any significant differences in the working style and in the way they approach movies between the North and South?
I've not done too much of South work, but what I did here was also very, very organized and amazing with Sudha Kongara. And Sudha was very particular on her script and on her, way of operation, which is very similar. But I do hear that there is, there is, like the script does evolve in projects here. But I think in Hindi, we largely work on a fixed script.
Okay.
There is also independents here who are doing fixed script. Like this is the number of days and we have to do it and we're very responsible. But here, this is what one has heard, there is a tendency to then figure out after the first half and after seeing it that let's figure out how the second half is. And it's each their own, you know, working styles. There are some working styles here like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that one thing that you think you're still chasing? Not professionally, but emotionally, that you think even Oscar did not fill?
Oh, not professionally.
Emotionally.
I think still chasing to live with a family.
Okay.
Because I'm married to Sunny, who lives in Delhi, and his parents are in Delhi, and we meet every 10 days, every 2 weeks. I'd love to have that stability that now I have a family and we live together. So I need to just tick that. So I'm still chasing, you know, how we can have a regular family. You know, I meet people and they're like, it's so exciting. You guys get to travel together and it's nice. You live separately. I was like, no. So, yeah.
What's the biggest life lesson that you've gotten across all these years?
To be honest, you know, we screw up all the time. Big things happen. But I think honesty goes a very long way. I think being honest and owning up is important. Being honest to yourself, being honest to your colleagues is important.
Oscars was a big thing for you, and of course it was a big thing for the entire country to see you go receive that. I know what happened the previous night, that you fell sick and all of that, but
On the night
of Oscars, yes. But your speech was also cut off.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? And do you feel Hollywood still does not respect Indian movies that much?
So they do tell you a lot of times that you have to be in a time limit, and they make you aware of that a lot. I was, I think, just to look at that stage from the other end was just crazy, incredible. And I think I did press a moment of panic, and I didn't even know how it happened. It just happened on its own when the music started playing, and it was a reality that I could not even just get a word in. I was like, oh, you know, this thing was like, when will I ever come back here? It was split second that. And split second was like, it's okay, I will come back. And I went back and I screamed to the choir, to the main unit there, because the whole hall cannot hear me, that this is the first Oscar for any Indian film. And 2 women here won it. And thank you, you know. So, but that did trigger an extreme heart rate anxiety, and I was hospitalized that night. Winning the Oscar and then being in Beverly Hospital all night was a very hard experience. Never been hospitalized. I was very disheartened, you know, and then I had to track back on what that happened. Maybe that just came to me as a huge shock. Like, aisa bhi hota hai. It can happen to me. You know, it was hard. It was a hard reality. And then I saw these videos where people got a lot more time, and you know, it was heartbreaking, but I'll go back. Now I've lived with that moment and said, I'm coming back. So yeah, no stress.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Generally, when you are in the public eye, right, you cannot not have trolls. How do you deal with negative messages and trolls?
It's very hard. It's very, very hard. It bothers me because I don't think I'm troll proof. And there's so much. People don't know you. People don't know your life's journey, your thoughts. They've never invested in knowing, but they're so easy in judging. They're so easy in just writing shit to anybody. It is so hard. It crushes your spirit and soul. The only way is to ignore and to build a muscle which it doesn't bother you. It's hard. It's hard to build that because you'll reply, then there will be more shit, you know, and then you're like literally in the shit, you know, and that becomes like news, and that becomes more gossip, and it's a whole, you know, it's a cycle of nonsense. So then you have to shut it out and you have to stay quiet and be like, I have nothing to say, because anything I say will only put fuel to the nonsense. So,
I mean, it just brings me to this point where during Sushant Singh's case, Riya Chakraborty was accused of so many things, and I can't even imagine what she went through. And because as public, nobody had an idea of what it was. Everybody had an opinion to say. And finally, after so many years, when the judge says, no, she's clean, I mean, she's got nothing to do with this. What that girl would have gone through for so many years.
So hard.
Yeah.
So hard. It's a witch hunting, and it's witch hunting in the public eye, which is just the whole country. I think the whole news, the whole networks, the whole system made one person as an evil. Because why? I feel like because she's a woman, she's because that was her girlfriend. I mean, it's non-stop nonsense. I had family people call me and they were like, oh, you're part of the industry, you tell us. I was like, please use your brains. Like people leave brains, they leave their logical way of thinking. And it's also a mob culture. It's also like, let's all rage and mob. If you break it down, speak to people individually, there's so much rage that one deals with. I think it's ridiculous. And I'm so glad that CBI has given her a clean chit, and she's incredible and a force. But it's just so hard for somebody to be in that storm and a family to be in that storm. It takes away years from your life and that level of trauma. And so much threat that you're scared to go out, or you're just scared, like the level of threat and abuses is a lot. Today that's given on even contradicting opinions. That is still a very big situation that we are speaking about. Even if you have contradicting opinions, you're threatened like, तेरे को मैं बताती हूँ, तू घर से निकल, ये वो. But and largely a lot of women are also pushed in the corner for this. Like, some of my friends who do reviews, and if it's they're in the business of reviewing films, and if they give a review which is what they feel is their opinion on the film, they're in the business of doing that. They're also heavily trolled. It's scary. It's hard.
How do we make this stop?
You can't make it stop. Like, will laws come in and stop? Like, it's just so vast. It's fake accounts, fake following, fake narrative, WhatsApp university, you can't make it stop. You can ignore and hope to continue living. Like, my friends moved countries.
Because
unfortunately.
of this?
Not because of this, but they feel safe that there is a lot of threat. Like, it feels like the threat is at the doorstep.
Yeah. And a lot of Indian movies don't seem to create that kind of an impact at the Oscars. What do you think we're missing here?
The answer is really simple. I think at the core, we are missing global distribution. At the core, we are missing, what is Oscars? Oscars is an American award show. It's played on US TV. It's a big award show, and it's incredible that, Oscar also changes lives. It impacts life because it expands your career. It's a huge validation for your art form, and it's aspirational as a trophy and as an award, which is incredible. That's an incredible honor of arts, of the cinema. But at the core of it, it also needs US distribution on any piece of cinema. So be it a Parasite, or be it, Everything Everywhere All at Once. It had US distribution, and then it found its legs, and that distributors made it travel, and, so there's a process to that. First is film festivals. So why do film festivals exist? They exist to find, they are curators. They exist to find
good movies,
the best films of the year as per them and as per their standards of curation. So there is Cannes, Toronto, there's BFI, there's, even amazing smaller film festivals, South by Southwest, Sundance, Telluride, Busan. Winning these film festivals are a huge testimony of arts And then finding global distribution or having a plan for global distribution is very important. And working very closely with an American distributor is at the center of running a good campaign.
Okay.
Because that is when you put the film out to a whole non-diaspora.
Okay.
You know, like RRR re-released their movie to capture the attention of people and press. You have to make a moment out of the film. How will you tell hundreds of people, millions of people that this film exists? The diaspora knows it, but the diaspora is not the voters, you know. And now the voters are worldwide.
Okay.
So going to a film festival, being celebrated at a film festival is important. That means it's a good film. And then having global distribution plans in place so that every country, there is a proper A-list distributor of that country distributing the film to the non-diaspora, and the diaspora knows about the film through Indian channels.
Okay.
You know, so that is at the core of it. I think working with US distributor is at the absolute core of it. Like Lunchbox was distributed by Sony Picture Classic and it did not get nominated from India. And I still have a huge scar about that. You know, I do think Lunchbox had the legs to...
Potential, yeah.
Had the potentials to go all the way. You know? But that's not in our hand because that's one foreign language category needs to be sent by the country. And it's important that... people who are still in the position to choose know that US distribution does play an important role.
Okay. And you were telling me when you went for the Oscars, you also got to spend like 1 month with Vetrimaran. Yeah. And you guys had a fabulous time together.
2016, because I was working on Visarne.
Okay.
So I ran the campaign for Visarne and I joined the team as an executive producer. I did take the film to Venice Film Festival, and post Venice, when it did get nominated from India, then we were in LA for a month and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you said you had great conversations. What was it like with Vetrimaran?
I think he's deeply spiritual and he's just somebody who is extremely intelligent, extremely aware, and spiritual in a way of, you know, not like, you know, coming and giving gyan, and spiritual in a way of life, like the way he reads people, the way he sees the world. I'm fascinated. And I did get to learn a lot. I think I was far more agitated and angry before I met him. And he was like, he came at that point in life and opened a whole avenue and allowed me to think more. Like, he opened something, I don't even think he knows this, but my conversations with him allowed me to be far more centered, far more aware, and have faith in myself and my work. You know, I think he allowed me to think that it's not about validation outside, but within you. I was spiraling down at the time in my own life. I was running a company that was shut down and I didn't know what I needed to do. And here I was, you know, hired by Vetri and Dhanush at that point of time to run the campaign for, and I was consulting them. While it was a professional engagement, it did become, because we then were living together, we moved to LA. They were like, how do we do this? I said, I don't know. Let's just go move there and let's figure it out and let's get a house. And we did that. We had a massive big house in Hollywood Hills, and we rented it out for a couple of months, and I was just there running the campaign, meeting people, figuring it out, asking the questions, and hustling so hard. And then coming back, articulating all of this, and Vetri would be like, you know, be kind to yourself. He taught me to be kind to myself. And I think I was addressing loss, grief, abandonment, you know, what is all this worth? People are so transactional. And I was in that space where I was complaining. And it was a point where I needed to take a break and look within and, you know, reprogram ourselves and show up better for myself first, and then the world will align. I didn't know how to. I think Vetri was the first person who showed me a way. Just spending time with him is enlightening, is amazing.
Is there anything specific that you remember from the conversation that you had?
It was 2016. Lots. It was every day. And also so much conversation on cinema and music.
Okay.
You know, like just so much, even his own work. And it was a masterclass of sorts of, you know, just every day of life. But yeah, he there was a day specifically where I spoke to him, and then, it was like, you just carrying a lot of baggage, and the way that has panned out for me, I don't think I've ever said this to him, but he did leave a huge, huge impact on me.
Who else has left an impact like that on you? An actor or a director?
Definitely Anurag Kashyap. I worked with him.
Yes.
For 5-6 years. Definitely a huge creative impact. We run a company together. That was the company that shut down. And I went into complete identity crisis and meaning of my being, why am I needed? What do I do? Was I a producer or a EA? I mean, I just went into a complete spiral for a few years, which was very hard for me. And I had to find my feet and then come back together. And, but yes, he did leave a huge impact in just understanding cinema. And it's so internal, it's, I think I learned how just observing him work with his honesty and his heart was lovely. The years that we worked together. And I think with Vetri, I learned to trust our intuition, because everything in life after has been doubling down on the intuition.
Yeah.
And there is no rocket science, and it is not something that you can explain. It is showing up for yourself. And when that faith happens, that alignment happens, just magic happens. People start articulating things that, they see your work and they start articulating. Like now I feel like I get retrospective love. I wanted this love in 2013 that I get now, so I'm grateful for it. I'm very grateful for all the retrospective love. Yeah.
When you were working with Anurag is known for making very bold statements, having a very different perspective about cinema and also life. I mean, during your personal conversations, how is he as a person?
How's he as a person? I knew him for 5-6 years of that period. And that was the time when he married Kalki. And I think he was really lovely. And I remember signing on the pages of their wedding, and that short span that we ran AKFPL was very ambitious, very like, let's continue doing what we are doing, believing in people, giving them full freedom, doubling down. You actually at most of the times, I think like a lot of us have the potential to go win the world. You sometimes just need that one person to tell you that I believe in you. So Anurag did become that person for many, many of us. And we made That Girl in Yellow Boots and Gangs of Wasseypur together. And he was just out of Devdi, then did Yellow Boots and Gangs of Wasseypur. And it was a great time. And to me, it was struggling in terms of our money, finances, running a company. But there was a lot of will and a lot of guts of we'll make it, we'll figure it out, we know what we are doing. And we also worked with a lot of incredible directors and built like 20 films or something and took them to the world, went to festivals. He would do an ad. With that money, we would hustle to go to festivals. So it was a great team. I miss the joy of that time, the freedom of that time. So yeah.
And it's been 20 years or more than 20 years, right?
No,
being in the industry for you.
Being in the industry, yes.
Have you ever been betrayed?
All the time. Betrayed. You make dreams with people. You put this whole journey together and you feel like, and you do work with a lot of young minds and directors. I do. And for me, it's like, okay, where do we go from here? And that's when they feel like, oh, thanks, I'll go my way, you go your way. That's the time I do feel sad. I understand it's their journey, it's my journey on my own. I do feel like, there has to be more value for it. It is a village that takes a film, and producing is a very, very, very difficult, thankless job, So for me, over the years, it's always been being okay that everybody's going to go away, and you take your backpack and start all over again all the time, So it's hard, but then someday some people will stick around. Like my core team has, and that is beautiful. We were able to build Sikhya. We are now, a very, very, very strong team. My producing partner Achin and I worked together for 18 years and built a whole company that matters, that the world knows. And we won an Oscar for the country. But betrayal in form of, as you live that journey, it's 2 years, you make a film together and then you feel like this is just the start. Let's go build an empire. That has still not happened with, in terms of building a world with talent. So, yeah.
You think people, not everybody, do you think most people are insecure?
Yeah, people are selfish, people are insecure, but people are also kind, and it's a mixed bag. In terms of being selfish, insecure, yes, because because the world of creativity, there are so many voices, and there are so many voices telling you, oh, this won't work, but this is not something that's going to work. This is a bad song. This is that, you should fight for it. You should do that. There's so many opinions. And till it comes out to the audience, you'll never know. And when it comes out to the audience, it's too late. So I think having a very centered life and trusting intuition is really important. And trusting your people is really important.
So trusting intuition, is that how you picked Yo-Yo Honey Singh?
I actually love the story of Yo-Yo Honey Singh. We've grown up on his music and then he disappeared.
Yeah.
And it is something that was offered to me by Netflix. And we brought in our director, Moses Singh, on it. And for me, it was a conversation with Honey and be like, if this is a tell-all, I'm in. And he was also in it. Like, we didn't want to make a puff piece. So if we can deep dive, and we can, you can allow us with you everywhere and allow us to ask all questions. So he was like, okay. And then that's when I was like, let's do it.
I mean, before he disappeared to what he is right now, he's two different personalities.
Yeah.
He's completely gone through some kind of a transformation internally. And during your conversations while making the entire thing, tell us something about him that the world does not know.
He's also somebody who's very bright and has, follows world music, is very centered, is also very spiritual. I definitely think that shift has happened of knowing himself better. I knew him in, I think, 2010. And he's very hardworking, and he would take on an opportunity and turn it around immediately, while others would think he would be like, here are 5 options of a song. This one. I got somebody in London to sing it. I got somebody in Singapore to mix it. He was always, that energy and that person. And now he's far more centered and far more aware, and also very, very kind and very, I think, of course, you're a rock star and you have this act. He's really yaro ka yaar, very emotional for his friends, for his family, will, cry and be like, this is my people. He's, he's also navigating that, and he's a beautiful soul.
Why did you think it was necessary for the world to know his story?
I think what he's dealt with mental health, it's so hard to talk about mental health till somebody's gone through it, and in everyday basis. You talk about the trolls, you talk about any kind of trauma, any kind of drug abuse that gets you to a certain mental situation in life. Nobody out there at that stature has ever spoken about mental health the way he has. And how Honey says it. And he's so raw and so, I would say pure honey. He said ना कि अगर liver kidney चला जाएगा तो भाई दे देगा, लेकिन अगर दिमाग चला जाएगा तो क्या करोगे? कुछ नहीं कर सकते, So the way he broke down mental health, it felt the story is very, very necessary. Because you look at people in privilege, you look at people coming from nowhere, making their money, uske baad kya? You know, how does one treat fame? Then you are recognized on streets, then you're abused for any wrong act, you know, you're idolized, you are hated, you are made a poster child of something, and then it's so hard. Then what does that one person and their family go through? It's great when time is great and it's all great going, but you're also in the public eye, and that can be taken away from you in a minute. You know, for something you've said, for something you've done, or something you've not even done, but culturally you're the soft spot. You know, so he articulated mental health on camera, and coming from somebody like him, I hope it spreads out more and more, and people see it and understand the value of, you know, it early on, and even for families. And I think his sister is amazing when she said, we didn't even know कि हम क्या करें, depression में क्या करना होता है. मतलब हम नाच रहे हैं, हम गा रहे हैं, हम उसको entertain कर रहे हैं, और you know, and then we are like, अब खुश हो जाना, अब क्या ही करें. और then you also get frustrated as a family dealing with somebody in deep depression. You're like, और क्या करें हम? And then you really have to treat it medically, and that acceptance has taboo. So here was Honey saying कि मैं ये दवाइयाँ खाता हूँ. This is what I went through. You know? So it was important to say that.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And also when you actually look at a lot of celebrities, right? They do movies or they speak about social causes, which is brilliant. But there are also certain people who endorse fairness creams or drinks that they don't drink and other things, which is not great for the society. Do you think there's a little bit of a hypocrisy there?
I mean, again, to each their own. I'm sure they're also paid for it, and it's also for money, you know. And they're aware, and you know, fame also brings you in positions where you need to navigate. I mean, people also do gutka and you know whatever that they do. So each their own, their life choices and decisions. I mean, I feel like, why sit here and judge? You know, like I feel everybody should know what's good for them and what's not. And judgment at every kind, every way should be out of the window. Everybody's fighting their battles.
If your life was to be made into a movie, what genre would that be?
Oh, it'll be, you know, this little girl just wanting love. It'll be a love story.
Yeah?
Just और क्या चाहिए होता है? प्यार ही तो चाहिए होता है दुनिया में. बाकी तो सब हो जाएगा. पैसा वैसा सब आ जाएगा. So yeah.
You married Sunny in your late 30s.
Yeah, at 39.
39. So for everyone who's watching this, it could be a man, it could be a woman. Somehow society has made us believe that early 20s, mid 20s is the best time for you to get married. And if you don't find a partner, then you're aging, your options are less, and there's so much
biological
pressure. Clock is ticking. There's so much pressure on both men and women right now. What is your message for them? Because I see how lovely both of you are as a couple right now. And you are extremely supportive of him, and you adore his mother, and his family adores you, and he's always with you, supporting you, and there's always this big, huge smile on his face every time we speak about you to him.
Yeah.
What is your message for people?
You know, it's true. किसी चीज को सच्चे दिल से चाहोगे तो पूरी कायनात जुड़ जाएगी. I really, really wanted to get married, and I think the universe stopped me so many times. I said yes to so many people. I was like, हाँ शादी कर लेते. I think I just wanted to desperately get married and find a partner and build a life and, you know, have parents. And I'm obsessed with his parents. At the right time, I think first fall in love with yourself, because we're always looking to love the other, you know, more than we love ourselves. And then we're like, we love you so much. Can you like return something? You know, and then we become beggars in the process, you know, and then you are in this vicious cycle of losing yourself. You know, like, what is this worth? And I have been through so many of those. So first step is to deeply love yourself, to know yourself, to enjoy your own company, And then you're in a position of adding value to somebody's life also. And also being able to receive value and love from the other and not imposing. So I'd be like, take a moment, love yourself, love your flaws, love your curves, love your beauty the way it is. Like, I hated myself, I was like, I don't have good hair. I'm a Sardarni. All Sardarnis have these gorgeous hair till like crossing knees. And I was like, I'm aging, I'm a certain size. And it's just, I didn't like myself at all. I didn't like the way I looked. I think that kya hi kar rahi hu, you're working so hard. And then, you start internalizing what people tell you, and to be able to navigate that, please do therapy. It's important because people told me you're a fluke, and I believed I was a fluke, and I was like, mere saath thodi na achha hota hai. But then you have to start navigating, it's what rubbish. You have to start saying that to all those things that you've told yourself. So first step, love yourself. Just get there, and at the right time, the best and only the best will happen. And when you truly believe the best will happen, it will.
Yeah.
I mean, Sunny has bridal wear business in Chandni Chowk. I make movies in Bombay. What are the odds?
Yes.
He sells lehengas in Chandni Chowk. Now they're moving to Narayana. But it's the odds like for us to meet, to be the same age. And he's in the business where he had rishtas 2 a day. I didn't have 1 all my life. So yeah. I was like, why am I so threatening? Thoda sure war ho jate ho, thoda paisa waisa aa jata hai, you become threatening. Like also to find men who like that, you're sure. You're not weak, you're not damsel in distress. So only the best will happen. And over the years, I've learned to say that, when heart breaks professionally, personally, it's only for the best. Because even better is in store. And we have to keep going. So that is not that defines you. It's you yourself who define yourself.
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with God?
Of buddies. Mentor, buddy, friend, my relationship with, I talk to the universe all the time, and I feel because my parents are up there, so for me, I do follow a spiritual practice, which is follow Guruji, which is just Gurbani. He's not there in his physical form. It's just, sit down and listen to Gurbani. I've just heard it so many times now. I used to not understand Thet Punjabi. But now that I've heard the same Kirtan or Shabad, the Bani so many times that I understand it. And that is just magical. I was like, oh, I understand it, and that gives me messages. So for me, it's 3 angels in the universe rolled into one. And that's what I imagine. And I just talk to them. When I was desperate to get married, I was like, guys, you've been passive about this. It's time for you to get active. I'm hiring 5 marriage bureaus, paying 1 lakh each. Each of them are going to show me 3 men who want to get married per week, 15 men per week. And I want to say yes to anybody who says yes to me. That is the truth of my life. I was like, now because sab to achhe log hote hai na, who's going to show you that they are toxic or they are bad in the first 3 meetings? And then, you're supposed to say yes to that. So I was like, so you guys get active. And if something is not meant to be, then burn that relationship. I don't know how to get out of something. I'll say yes to whoever says yes to me. So I went and hired 5 marriage bureaus, and I had 15 men per week. Whoever said yes to me, I said yes. I was like, done. But what's meant to be, then I met Sunny on a dating app in the second lockdown, and he was based out of Delhi. I'm based out of Bombay still. So, yeah.
Do you realize what you basically did with God was the highest form of surrender?
Yeah.
You telling, you take care. I'm just going to blindly trust what you intuitively make me feel. I'm going to go ahead with the decision.
Yes.
And every time in my life, I've personally seen, the minute I want to just give up on everything, that is the time I surrender. I say, now it's your job. You do whatever you want. I'm just okay with that.
Yeah.
And when the surrender happens, the resistance also goes. When the resistance goes, whoever is the right person or whatever is the best thing for you will show up in your life.
Absolutely. And that also does come after effort. It's not like God is passively working.
Exactly.
Effort is all yours.
That is what people miss out on. They
Yeah.
think like, okay, first moment I'm going to just surrender, let God do the work. No,
Yeah.
you do the work.
Yeah.
Get to that point of frustration of, oh my God, nothing is working out.
All the
Because,
work.
because it is your ego that is coming in the way. And then you say, okay, you do it. I just surrender. Abundance, love, everything starts to flow into your life.
So it's a life full of abundance of love, abundance of grace. And that's all I ask for. And I really ask for clarity in my decision making, because we're making so many decisions. Our choices define us, and there's somehow, if I have a question, like the best people for that arrive. They arrive on, like in the pandemic, I wanted to learn learn about stocks. I was not investing before that. I didn't know. I have very little money. But I wanted to. And I signed up for a random course on Twitter. Random. And I was like, first three classes I understood everything. And then got really dense, and I was like, very good. Do you do personal portfolio management? Just and then, working with him has given me, I think 150% return. And it's just like, I didn't know anybody from anywhere. I didn't know where to look, where to start. But I genuinely was like, okay, I want to learn this. I want to unlock that. I want to be able to trust.
Yeah.
And rest, you find your... So it was amazing to...
And I love that ability in you where the first instinctive feeling you have towards a person is just trust.
100%.
Because I am also like that. I meet somebody in my head, I feel like they're just as they portray themselves to be. I don't think about, do they have intentions, this, that, and all of that. I think this is much more easier to live.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to complicate things in your mind. If a betrayal happens, okay, that has happened. Now you learn something, but you cannot approach a person with the intention of they'll have bad intentions for me. That is very pressurizing.
Yeah. And I'm also very physical. Like I love hug. I love giving good hugs, and I love taking, just nice hugs. And it feels like, and sometimes, when I'm in a tough scenario, when I'm in a very, very tough room or in a tough conversation, I literally zone out. And this is my secret. I zone out. And I was like, if there is a God in this person, can my God talk to their God, and please sort this? We're not making sense in our human forms. We're not making sense. And this is not healthy. Can please my God speak to their God? Because every human being has a God within them.
Yes.
And it is so beautiful. They come into your life in a different roop, in a different avatar. They're like, somebody's come out very aggressive, very upset, very toxic, very hard. I'm like, guys, let's have normal conversations. So sometimes I literally like zone out, and I'm just like, please God, my God, talk to your God. We need a different level of conversation here. Only then there's clarity.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's a great hack.
Yeah.
It's actually a great hack.
So I really try to see the God within really terrible times. I look harder. I'm just like, there's something nice about this person, and that niceness needs to be appealed to. So, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of questions, more like a rapid fire and a fun section. So I just want you to give out an answer, right? Is there a movie that you keep revisiting again and again?
Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge.
Why?
Because I feel like it ruined me. All my life, I was looking for Raj only to find Sunil from Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na. So my husband's name is Sunil. It's my internal jokes. I was looking for a Raj all my life, And that Simran and that, koi aayega, bachayega. So DDLJ.
One filmmaking rule that you wish is broken.
Making projects. I know today what my film will do. Just experiment, have fun. Yeah. The world is ready for it.
If you had an unlimited budget, what's that one film you would make?
Jurassic Park in India. I'd love to make a big... creature adventure film. Yeah. Brown Panther, Crazy Rich Indians, figuring it out.
Okay. Has there ever been a collaboration that you regret?
Yes.
Why?
because it's a lesson I didn't learn. Because it's a lesson the life tried to teach me a couple of times. I didn't learn because I go into everything. Sab अच्छा है, सब अच्छे लोग हैं. I didn't do paperwork. I didn't do a contract because I didn't know it was such a special situation. I didn't know how to, and I trusted, and I felt betrayed by the end of it. So yeah, so do your paperwork, set your boundaries, have more clarity when you enter a business, when doing business with people. So yeah.
Who's the most underrated filmmaker in India?
I think Vasan Bala or Rahi Anil Parpe. Yeah.
Okay. What's the underrated film in India that everybody should go and watch?
But, I mean, very recently because I saw it, Superboys of Malegaon, because it's literally just like 2 weeks old.
Okay. If you could remake any Bollywood classic, which one would that be?
Mr. India.
Why?
I love it. The sense of magic in it, there's a sense of make-believe. There's that magic, and it has such a huge impression on me. So,
right. Who's the most professional actor you worked with?
Imran Hashmi.
Okay, interesting. Why?
Very professional, very thorough, amazing, disciplined, amazing.
And the most professional actress?
Most professional actress, Sania Malhotra.
I thought you'd say her name. One myth about filmmaking that people believe but is not true.
About filmmaking that it's very easy. It's so hard. It's a very, very hard business to be in. And it's very long drawn out. It takes a lot of time. It's very hard. It's not like you'll get into it and aa jayega, and because you experience it in an hour and a half, sometimes 15 minutes, but it's so hard.
The biggest misconception about Bollywood stars?
I mean, that they're full of themselves. I think they're amazing, and they're also working hard and putting themselves and their craft out there. Yeah. I think the gossip culture, yellow journalism, what travels, the negative stories travel more.
Yeah.
So the negative, people are always looking for the negative to put out there. But it's beautiful. Amazing people, well-traveled, aware. You can have some of the best conversations in the world with them. So yeah.
If you weren't a producer, what would you be doing right now?
I would be in the social sector, and I would definitely be in, running an NGO, eradicating hunger from the country.
Okay.
Yeah, it bothers me. Like, there's so much of abundance of, mind, and there's also overflowing. But there's also so many people who are so, at the other extreme, where we inhabit together, and there are interiors of India where people don't have enough food, so yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Guneet, I don't know. Every time I meet you or I have a conversation with you, it feels so full because you're very real as a person. Though you worked with so many stars that people are in awe with, right? You're just so grounded and it's just so beautiful. Thank you so much for doing this. And I had a fabulous time having this conversation.
Thank you. I'm so happy, and more power to you. I love you and I'm in awe of you. And I'm so lucky that I met you and have this friendship with you. So thank you.
Oh, I love you too. This is so beautiful. Thank you.